Section 2, Chapter 36, The End, or Who Knows What.
Who knows how long Zentran remained inert? He'd become accustomed to his solely spiritual state. He still thought about Fora in a helpless sort of way. Thoughts of Zack and Venru also came to him from time to time. What had actually befallen his friends, he'd probably never know. It had occurred to him that the unthinkable may have happened. However, like all of us, possibly a safety mechanism we have within, that which is not confrontable is considered unlikely to happen to us in person. It helps us stay sane, I guess. Also, to pay such a negative concept credit, any credit at all, could give the idea validation enough to possibly occur. And so it was that Zentran had discarded the disastrous thoughts and put them out of his mind. Nevertheless, none of this had helped. Unbeknown to him, the unthinkable had happened. Venru's beingness had been transferred to a lookalike. No technology existed to undo it. Nakas probably knew of a way. There was no knowing the extent of Nakas's knowledge. He had no idea what had happened to Fora either. The consolation of not knowing helped in a way when he thought of his wife-to-be, the best friend he'd ever known. Venru's wonderful music and the overwhelming reality that he'd never see any of them again. He'd not be able to complete his mission either. In the nebulous form time took on in his non-materialistic condition, he noticed a planet a long way off. He found this new awareness interesting. Moving closer, he became more curious. There wasn't much to become excited about, but such had been his state of boredom that any fresh thought breathed life into him. It felt stimulating, so he continued. The planet was nearer now. He was in no hurry, as he had all the time in the universe. If he could have laughed, he would have. There was life on this planet, and even though he had no idea where he was, or anything about the planet, the idea that it was inhabited seemed so inspiring. It was like an awakening. He realized so simply that he was himself. The concept held a great deal more than he would have given credit for. On the outskirts of the planet's atmosphere, he found himself in a transparent sphere, which appeared quite interesting at first. Interesting only until he found that it somehow impeded his withdrawal from it. Not too concerned, he exerted some energy to move out of whatever it was. But it still held him. The spirit trap was strong. Exerting all the energy he could muster, which for Zentran was considerable, he remained trapped. At this point, he became concerned. He noticed a number of similar traps in the vicinity, all of them empty, but evidently perfectly operational. He wondered if he would be stuck in it for an eternity, or would he be collected later for some obscure purpose? It became inconceivable that the sphere could be so strong. But the more energy he used to withdraw from it, the more rigidly it held him. Suddenly it came to him that the trap must be using his own force, somehow mirrored to keep him in. Relaxing completely to a state of nothingness, he drifted slowly down and through the bottom of the worrisome device. Relieved and feeling like laughing again, he made his way past others, avoiding them with great respect, lest negotiating from them not be as easy. More interested now than ever, he mused that someone or something on this planet did not want outside intruders. Or did they have some motive for keeping the planet's inhabitants in? From a distance, in his unseen form, he observed the people for a while. There was no malice with them. They were decent people, and like on so many planets, introverted into their all-important bodies. When would people learn? He remembered, though, how it had been with him, his friends and the people he cared so much about, where he'd come from. It softened him in his ridicule. Perhaps these people knew the location of his home planet, Delta 4b, or perhaps the whereabouts of the Namcon Confederacy. He knew, however, that even if he did find his way back, it could and probably would be a completely different time. Any chance was worth a try, though, and returning was part of the problem. So it was that Zentran decided to take on a body on this planet known as Krakus. Obtaining a helpless baby body from birth, learning a new language, and enduring through childhood seemed too tedious. It required more patience than he was prepared for. He could take over a fully grown body, the best he chose, but that presented a different problem. He wasn't a thief. Perhaps he could borrow one. No. These people were nowhere near up to understanding such a request. In the remote chance that someone might be knowledgeable beyond their sphere of education and have some understanding of the spiritual realm, who would not be suspicious of trickery? Closer observation revealed a highly regarded sport within the culture. It was one of combat with sword and shield. Although technological progress had taken them beyond this era, the ancient arts tradition had been carried forward and was still celebrated colourfully. Casualties, however, left many severely injured and dead. This was not a sport for the faint-hearted. It was in sharp contrast to the rest of their modern-day culture, which Zentran found boring to the extreme. Shakan was a combatant, and a good one. He was their world champion, and put the fear of the Great Alignment into opposing combatants. On this day, however, he'd been drugged by a woman who'd administered the substance covertly. Such was his confidence that he'd still fearlessly faced an adversary on the field, but in reality was in a sorry state. The result was him lying mortally wounded on a slab. Second prize was never good in this sport, and a result Shakan had never experienced before. Neither had the crowd. They had all stood up, aghast at him having fallen. Zentran observed as the body lay dying on the slab. Shakan exited the body, as is normal at such a time. From above, he and Zentran observed the sports arena's physician trying in vain to resuscitate the body. He was known simply as Mert the physician. Zentran recognized the dying body on the slab. This was the gladiator he'd seen in the mental image picture when first encountering the free being in the depths of the dark zone. The one he'd thought was himself Mert was a quiet but efficient physician. He was old by any standard, and experience told him that Shere Khan was close to death. He'd never make it to hospital. He took out his scanner, which was unusual in this sport. Scanners, being born of a modern era, didn't fit with the ancient customs associated with sword and shield. Therefore, they were frowned upon. But this was no ordinary combatant to him. He felt a close tie to Shere Khan, and so had to make sure. The shaking of his head and unhurried professional manner told its story to his assistants, and a girl who watched. Zentran addressed Shere Khan in the spiritual realm.
Don't you want the body anymore?
Surprised by Zentran, and clearly confused with the process of dying, Shere Khan cast his attention back to his stricken body on the slab. Slowly, he redirected his attention to Zentran.
It's broken. And dying.
Hesitating to reconsider, he changed the last concept to
Dead.
He paused again, while examining his once so trusty and proud possession.
I can't do anything with it anymore.
There was sadness as Shere Khan slowly moved to forsake the space. Observing that Shere Khan was about to move on, Zentran once again inquired,
Are you sure you don't want it?
From a position further away, Shere Khan cast his attention back to his body, considering its mortal wound.
I'm sure.
He thought abruptly.
Is it okay if I use it then?
Zentran asked. Shere Khan displayed little emotion, other than a feeling of foolishness on Zentran's part.
Be my guest.
He thought disdainfully. Then, with a burst of anger mixed with regret, was no longer there.